All right, thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Humbert. This is Melody Bateman.
Hello.
So we're with Body Smart, and today we're starting our first episode of the Body Smart Book Club.
Woohoo.
And so kind of the genesis of that idea was built around why we got into what we're doing in the first place and why we're practicing the way we are. We love health, we love fitness. We're super excited about it, and we want other people to be excited about it too. And so we wanted to pull apart some of our favorite books, digest them and put them into sizable chunks. Put it out to you guys to learn more about that. Some of those favorite books that talk about running, how our aerobic system, how our body deals with running, how it adapts to a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And all the way to how to train and what to look for in when you're training, when you're looking to reduce injury and improve fatigue and everything like that. And so
all the fun stuff, basically.
Yes. So the first book that we're starting off with, which we're super excited to bring to you, is we have our own copies here, 80-20 Running,
Woohoo.
right, by Matt Fitzgerald. There we go, I got his name. Really an excellent book going over the physiology of running, as well as why we should train in certain ways and how that can benefit us and improve we can improve ourselves as athletes, specifically as runners, and doing so while avoiding injury and making it a lot more enjoyable, really.
Yeah, that's the key to 80-20 running. I think it makes running way more fun. I think a lot of people are like, okay, I got to get out and do a run, and that means I have to kill myself and push myself super hard. But with 80-20 running, that's not the case.
Yeah.
We're going to make it fun.
And I think that's so important, right? Because exercise, it is fun, okay, right? Straight bottom level, it is fun. You might not believe us right now, but hopefully we can convince you over the course of this. And I think that's a really important point that you spoke to, Melody, is that idea of like we shouldn't just be dead, and that's something that I struggle with, right? And we use exercise as kind of a badge of honor, right? Oh man, I went to the gym and I just crushed it for like hours today,
and
right?
I couldn't walk for a week.
Right? Like I'm dead, right? Or oh man, I just blasted myself on that run and I went so fast and so far, and I'm just gonna lay on the couch and eat Cheetos the rest of the night, right? Like
It's okay, I deserve it. I did my workout this morning. So.
Yeah. But really, the idea is making exercise accessible and doing it in such a way that we're not wearing our body out day in and day out, right? Because our body needs time to heal and to get better and to change. And so, yeah.
Right. So imagine this. Imagine going on a 15-mile run in the morning and you get home and you feel great. And you go grocery shopping, you clean the house, you take care of the kids, you do what you got to do, you go to bed, it was a great day. Instead of running 50 miles in the morning and being dead the rest of the day.
Right. We don't want that. So I think what would help to start out is let's talk about the SAID principle, or SAID. So it's an acronym acronym that stands for specific adaptation to imposed demands. Fancy language. We just like to make our acronyms fancy, right?
Right.
Basically what that's saying is that our body will adapt to the stresses that we put on it. And what we want to do is to put the right stresses for the right amount of time on our body so that it gets us where we want to be. And so I guess let's dive right into kind of the low intensity versus high intensity divide.
Right. So there's different benefits between low intensity training and high intensity training. And the trick to 80-20 is finding the right balance between low intensity and high intensity. A lot of runners and athletes find themselves kind of in this in-between stage where it's not really low intensity and it's not really high intensity. They're just right in the middle.
It's the black hole.
It's the black hole. These are your garbage miles. This is where all you're doing is hurting your body. You're not getting the most out of your workout. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the benefits of high intensity training and then the benefits of low intensity training and how the appropriate balance is going to help you be the best athlete.
Yeah. And I think the really important thing that we should stress just to start out is that we need both high intensity and low intensity. Because I think what happens is people really get polarized, right? Oh, just do, like HIIT exercises are super popular right now, and they can do really great things, but people end up taking that to the extreme, or on the opposite level, right? They're like, oh, I'm never going to get up in that high intensity. I'm just going to keep it here.
Just slow, easy run every day.
Yeah. Which is nice.
Yeah.
But we want that combination because it's going to increase our performance on both ends, and we get the benefits of both forms of training without losing out. Mm-hmm. And so let's start off with the high intensity training. And so with that, let's go a little bit into the physiology behind running. What happens?
Fun stuff.
I know. Science is fun. We're nerds, but it's good. I feel like that's everyone's like, oh, I'm a nerd today. It's our new badge of honor.
Yeah.
I guess that's good. So I guess let's talk about mitochondria. What's happening in the mitochondria as we're exercising? There's like the joke, right? I feel like there's so many memes about it, right? I didn't learn how to balance a checkbook, but I can tell you that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? Which is true. And so what the mitochondria do is it allows us to better extract oxygen from the blood so that we can break apart the fuel in our body and release energy. And primarily those fuels that we're going to talk about are fats and carbohydrates. And so what happens in getting those bouts of high intensity exercise is it increases the amount of mitochondria that are in our cells, which increases our ability to use oxygen to fuel us. And so that's really awesome. And so in spending more of that, or in spending that time in the high intensity zone, we'll really maximize the benefit of that. So that's the first one. Second thing they can do is it just it gives us a better muscle pump, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our heart
strengthens our heart.
Strengthens our heart. You have a better heart, right?
Yeah.
But it's really cool, right? So it's able to because our heart can contract more forcefully. It's able to get that oxygen in our blood to our muscles more quickly. And the really cool side effect over time is that it also lowers our resting heart rate. Our heart doesn't have to beat as fast to get that blood out to it.
Yeah. So for you runners who are just doing slow run every single day, you're wondering why your resting heart rate is never dropping. It's because you're not doing high intensity. You got to throw some high intensity in there for that to drop. For
sure. And I think the other important point that we should put out there is that that high intensity is where we increase our speed. And that's going to be really important.
Right. So a cool example of that is my husband and I trained for a 50-mile race last year, and it was awesome. We really enjoyed it. But the thing is, our split times never ever dropped. In 15 weeks of training, our split times never dropped, and I didn't understand why until I discovered 80-20 running, and now we're training for a 100-mile race that we're super excited for, and we've incorporated any 80-20 running, and we're seeing our split times drop, and it's so exciting. It's so fun. We're not discouraged like we were during our 50-mile race. Our split times used to be between 14 and 16 minutes. In just 2 weeks of doing high intensity, our split times have dropped 2 or 3 minutes. I was able to run 26 miles on Saturday with a split time of 12 minutes and 58 seconds.
Nice.
Yeah. So it works, guys.
Real world
That's
results.
How we're going to get fast. Yeah.
Yes. I love it. So that's our quick and draw on high intensity. Mm-hmm. So let's switch over to the benefits of low intensity. And so one of the really important things that it does, and this is vital for runners to learn and to train their bodies to do, is that as we spend those long periods of time at low intensity, it trains our body to use fat as the primary source of fuel. Not Sool.
Fuel.
I don't know what Sool is.
I don't know.
As the primary source of fuel. And so we have a lot more fat stores on our body than carbohydrate. Even really, really thin people have a lot more fat calories to utilize than carbohydrate. So just quickly, right, as a rough amount, we have about 2,000 calories of carbohydrate on us at any given time. And that's between what's circulating in the blood, what's in the liver, and what's in the muscles. And so, really, according to the recommended daily amount of calories, it's about a day's worth of calorie, right? You're going to skew higher and lower depending on a bunch of other factors, but we'll just use that as a rough thing, right? So about a day's worth of calories in your muscles. and liver, versus fat, about 100,000 calories we can use, right? So 2,000, 100,000, right? Huge difference. And so being able to teach our body to use that fat and tap into those stores is going to keep us fueled for a longer period of time. And then the additional benefit is that we don't have to eat as much to refuel ourselves and to get us to keep going. And so that's one of the really awesome benefits. The other one, I think, is, again, that's probably equally as important as our body using fat and fuel is the fatigue part of things.
It improves our fatigue resistance. Yeah, so we want to build our mental toughness, right? And that's going to come from our long runs, running for a long time, which we're not going to be able to do a super long run in high intensity with a heart rate of 180. You're not going to be able to run 26
Unless you just want to be
miles
laying on the floor and just,
Yeah.
crawling.
Exactly. So we want to be running at low intensity for longer periods, and the longer... Sorry, I just lost it.
No, you're all good. You're all good. And so it's really cool, right? Like, our brains are amazing tools, aren't they? So it's interesting with fatigue. A lot of the recent research has really implicated the brain as a huge part in fatigue resistance, and that our brain will shut us down before we reach absolute maximum capacity. Which is, it's nice of our brain. It likes to maintain things. And so the other cool thing is that it's extremely trainable. So we talk a lot in running and performance about aerobic capacity, right? Oh, what's your VO2 max number, right? Like, let me max it out, right?
Right.
Which, right, that tells us how much oxygen we're able to get through our system in a given period of time, right? But VO2 max isn't the end-all, say-all, and it shouldn't be. The really cool thing is that we can max that out pretty fast over during a pretty short training period, right? Get to what our body's max capacity is for moving that oxygen through our system. But what we found is that past that point, performance can still improve. Speed can improve even after aerobic capacity is maxed out, and that's where fatigue resistance comes in. That's where training the brain comes in.
Exactly. And here's the thing with low intensity. The more low intensity runs you do, the more benefit you're going to get. Versus high intensity, once you hit a certain point, you're not going to get any more benefit if you do more high intensity.
Yeah.
But it's what Matt Fitzgerald says, it's the gift that keeps on giving. The more you do, the more benefit you're going to get. And that's why, as a runner, you always hear runners say, never miss a long run, right? Because it's so important in not only building muscle and getting your body conditioned, but also building that mental toughness and getting used to being on the trail or on the road for long periods of time.
Definitely. And so really the primary thing in building that toughness is the brain needs to focus for an extended period of time on a particular task. And so the nice thing about slow runs is that ends up being the primary focus. Because you're not taxing the body's systems the way that you would with high intensity exercise, and even with moderate intensity exercise, it gives your brain time to really build that resistance and to get used to running for longer and to enjoy running for longer, which is super cool. And what they've found in some of the studies that he references in this book is that over time training in this way, that with like the same, let's say the same distance in a slow run, right, same pace, that people's rating of their effort for that given task drops over time as they continue training, as they do long run after long run after long run.
Right. And also, all you runners out there have heard of the wall, right? You're running and you hit the wall and you want to stop, right? But there comes a point where, if you keep going, you know what it's like to break down that wall. And all of a sudden you get into the zone where you're like, whoa, I feel good again. And you can keep running, right? So you also want to learn how to break down those walls on these long, low intensity runs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and just helping you realize that you can do that, right? Like that's such a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
I passed through that. I did it again and again and again, and it just builds on itself. And so, like you said, really the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
One thing that you mentioned that I think we should draw out is that, right, high intensity exercise gives us benefit, to a certain point, and then after that, it really drops off. And so what happens is it ends up suppressing the parasympathetic system, right? Our rest and digest system, and it can lead to chronic fatigue, higher injury rate, and just other things that we'd rather not have, right? We want to cut that. We want to take the good from high intensity that we can and try to limit the bad as much as we can.
Right, and if you're a runner, I bet you've experienced this. That they call it runner's fatigue, right? Where maybe you haven't ran for a long time, you sign up for a race, and you start training again, and all of a sudden you're tired all the time. You're just dragging all day, every day, no matter how much you're sleeping, or maybe you're not eating right, but it's just because you're not training right. You've done too much high intensity. Will do that to you. It means you got to back off a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. So, I guess let's go over a couple of the little nuggets that we liked. One of the things that we found interesting in the book was talking about open tasks or open-end tasks versus open loop versus closed loop tasks. Yeah. And so basically the idea that humans are really good at suffering when we know when it's going to end.
When there's a reason.
Right?
When there's a reason to suffer.
When there's a reason. Yeah. And so that's something that can be really helpful in the training, right? Is that in building a training plan, right? This is what my runs are going to look like. This is how long they are, and then psychologically it becomes easier, right? Our brain is like, okay, it's going to be this time. Yeah, I can do it. I can keep it up for that time, and it has some really cool results. I know you're telling me a story recently about you and your husband running.
Yeah. So like I said, my husband and I are training for a 100-mile race, and we started our program we're basing everything off of mileage, running this much mileage every single week. And so it turned into, a 5-mile run on this day, 5-mile run on this day, 5-mile run on this day. And my husband was telling me he kind of got into this slump where it just wasn't fun for him anymore. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go pound out these 5 miles. He just didn't have a reason to do it anymore. So what we did is we changed it from total amount of miles to total amount of time every single week. So instead of I'm going to go run 5 miles, we turned into I'm going to go run for an hour. And now it's turned into a challenge. Now it's how many miles can we get in 1 hour? We have 1 hour to run and that's it. And my husband, he has energy again. His split times are dropping. And it's fun again because we have a reason. It's a challenge every time we go out and run.
Yeah, right? Like that's so cool. I love hearing that. And we were talking earlier, kind of being able to apply that to other areas of life. And this is just a quick aside because we thought it was a really interesting topic to talk about. But I found that when I'll schedule my time that way, right? So say I want to read this thing, or I need to do this thing, or whatever it is, and I say, okay, you have this hour to do it. I end up being a lot more productive in that time. It ends up maximizing what I get done, and then because I know that it's going to be okay when this time chunk is done, I'm moving on to the next thing, or I'm going here, and that's something that's really helped me focus not just like in exercise and as an athlete, but in other areas of my life. So really cool principle.
And that's great, especially for all of us in isolation right now who are sitting at home and we have no idea what to do, right? If we decide, okay, I'm going to read from this time to this time, I'm going to clean from this time to this time, you're going to be more productive in those times instead of just having this big list of, I have to do this and this and this and this today. Yeah,
because that really gets overwhelmed, or it really gets overwhelming. Our brain makes this to-do list of everything, and it just kind of ends up as this amorphous blob of I need to do this. But when we take the time to really plan out our time and give our brains the chance to latch on to, okay, I have to do this from this much time, and then I get a break, or I get to do this. Can be really helpful.
It goes to quality instead of quantity.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really true point. I think the last point to hit, so we introduced the book, right? 80-20 running. And we've talked about that difference between the running Bible. Yeah, we've talked about the difference between the high intensity, low intensity, kind of what we're looking for, and really we should talk about the 80-20, what that means. And so in this book, it talks about balancing. Well, I guess it's not. We'll use the term balancing loosely, right? Because it's not 50-50, but it ends up being balanced in maximizing those benefits of both low intensity and high intensity, and mitigating any of the negative effects. And so what they found is that spending about 80% of time at that lower intensity, and then about 20% of the time at that higher intensity ends up really benefiting
your total run volume.
And so, it can be hard to be like, okay, if you're a novice athlete or you're just trying to figure out a training plan, it can be hard. Like, how do I want to do this, or how much time do I put in, et cetera.
How do you find the balance? How do you make sure that 80% of your runs are at low intensity and 20% are at high intensity? It's kind of hard to track that.
Yeah.
Right? And also there's a lot of other factors too. Like maybe you shouldn't do 80-20 1 week because your body's broken. You've been pushing it really hard. Maybe you do need to back off and it should be more 90%, 10% 1 week. It's kind of hard to monitor that.
Yeah. But really building into it. Obviously, as we talked about, getting in those longer runs is crucial, right? And so, like, we're talking, an hour plus of running, and getting that in multiple days. But that shouldn't be a barrier for entry for anyone into running, right? It's something that we all can do. And so I think going after the idea of we can start anywhere. So what the American Academy of Sports Medicine recommends or American College of Sports Medicine, is that we each get at least 30 minutes of moderate physical activity on at least 5 days per week. And so ends up being about 150 minutes towards the week. So if you're just starting off, you're looking for somewhere to kind of split up that 80-20, that's a great place to start. But as we talked about before, when we increase that volume of training, not necessarily intensity, but the volume of training, that's where those additional benefits especially come in. But starting anywhere, starting where you're at and getting into it and being able to do it in a way that your body adapts well and responds well, so that you're not always tired, you're not always exhausted, that you can really live to play another day, live to fight another day, and just keep going and get to do what you love.
For sure. And I think that's a good point. The most important thing is that we're listening to our bodies, and because no one else can feel what we're feeling, right? We need to listen to our bodies and do what's right for us.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the synopsis of that. That first little bit that we want to go over, but really some really interesting, some really great topics and fun stuff. Like I think it's a blast to learn about, and
for sure.
We're learning along with you, improving along with you. And so, so again,
it's 80-20 Running by Matt Fitzgerald if you want to get the book and read along with us.
Yeah.
I think that's all we want to hit today, right?
Yeah, so that was really chapter 4 that we went through. A lot of good stuff in the first couple of chapters, kind of going more into the theory of 80-20 running and how kind of the genesis of the idea, how it came to be. But what we would love for you guys to do is tell us what you're training for and how your training's going. Let us know if you have any questions. So that's the end of our first episode. So we'll catch you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.